anyone who's in with us, welcome. Thank you for coming. So I reckon we'll just crack into it. My name is Meg Williams, and this session is relevant programming for clever marketing. And I'm very fortunate today to have a panel of people who are hopefully going to help me answer that question. So this session came about, I was asked by Creative New Zealand to come up with a session that responded to this provocation. And I talked to our Festival Artistic Director, Sheila Magadza, who sadly can't be here today. She was keen to be part of this. And one of the things, the first thing we thought was we need to put together a fantastic panel of people who can really talk about their experiences and talk to you about how they have created programs and created work that has really engaged audiences. So I'm very, very pleased to have secured such a brilliant panel. So thank you guys for your time. So first of all, my background is I'm a marketing and development manager at the New Zealand Festival. So most of my days are spent marketing the New Zealand Festival, the Wellington Jazz Festival, Lexus Songquest, and various other things as they come along. But I'd like to now just turn to the panel and introduce you one by one. So first of all, Hone Kouka, kia ora. Hone is an acclaimed playwright. I'm sure many of you are very familiar with him and his work. He's an award-winning playwright and director, the co-founder of Tuatara Productions, and relevancy is really top of mind when we think that Hone is right in the middle of his first ever festival, Ahi Kaa Festival, which is on in Wellington at the moment. I know a few of you will have been to some of the works there, so thank you so much for taking some time out of a very busy festival time and production week. And also tonight, Hone, do you want to give your plug for your development site this evening?
We are actually running two festivals at the same time. We have the Ahi Kaa Festival, and there's a production of Ngā Pou Wahine, which is free, 6:30 at Te Papa, up at the marae there. And also tonight at 7:30 p.m. is a show called Mani Pacquiao of Timberlea, which is part of the Matariki Development Festival, and that's over here at Circa Theatre. So two fabulous shows, two different festivals, and no mai haramai. So thanks.
Thanks very much. So I'd also like to, on the end there, welcome Tracey Monastra. So Tracey is a programmer and producer and works in the field of predominantly contemporary visual arts. Tracey is also a trained designer and has been involved in a number of theatre productions over the years. She's currently the manager of visitor learning at City Gallery Wellington. So please everyone welcome Tracey. Get a clap, come on. And finally in the middle there we have Neil Ieremia. Neil started off as a dancer and became a choreographer and now a creative entrepreneur. Founded the Black Grace company in 1995. And that company has gone on to huge success with major national tours and has also taken that company overseas on a number of occasions for international work. So everyone here on the panel has been celebrating some kind of birthday. For Hone, it's the first birthday of Ahi Kaa. For Tracey, it's recently the 21st birthday of the City Gallery. And Neil, it's 20 years of Black Grace, so thank you very much. So Neil, I'd actually like to start with you and take a look back at the very first couple of days of your, the first years of your company. So thinking back to 1995, so the first show that you produced was completely sold out before it even opened, and that season, I believe, broke a New Zealand record for contemporary dance in terms of attendances. So can you tell us about your vision behind founding the company and that work, and why do you think it attracted so many people and was so successful from the very first day?
Talofa and kia ora, it's nice to be here. Black Grace in 1995, I'd been working as a freelance dancer, and basically I wanted to tell stories from my neighbourhood and from my culture. I grew up in Cannons Creek in Poriro, which is about 20 minutes away from here, and I did that with a group of 9 other males, Pacific Island and Māori males. We had a 3.5-week rehearsal period on a grant from Creative New Zealand of about $12,000, which didn't cover our wages. We went to the Maidment Theatre, which seats about 417 people, and we had 4 shows, and it sold out before we opened, which was great, and I think that was the record rather than the number of audience, the sort of the way that it sold out before it opened. I think people were genuinely interested in seeing brown men with no tops on, to be quite frank, on stage. You know, we had one woman turn up and she thought we were a strip show. But we told all of our friends and our families. That's how we got a lot of those people there, to be fair. I mean, we just went out to our networks as Pacific Island people and Māori people and said, come to our show. And said, okay, bro, sure. So we had a whole bunch of first-timers turn up, and they laughed and didn't know how to behave in a theatre, really, I think. I mean, you know, so it was a bit of a mix of a whole bunch of folk, and they really propelled our sales and got our numbers up, and that was sort of the beginnings, really, of Black Grace. We were able to make some money out of that and then go on and invest in another season later on in the year. So...
And so you were saying that that audience was predominantly new to contemporary dance, you think? I mean, was it purely through your own personal family networks, or what do you think it was about?
I know we also got a lot of publicity because we were unusual. Back then, the landscape for contemporary dance wasn't brown and certainly wasn't male, a lot of brown male. So seeing brown guys on a news program sort of doing contemporary dance was quite odd. And so I think a whole lot of people wanted to come to see that. So we got a lot of publicity, a lot of free publicity, and people came. But we did rely heavily on our family networks and our friends. But that all changed after that, when the dances that I started to make weren't so cheery, and were a little bit darker. I think we started to lose some of those Pacific Island people. But a lot of them, yes, were first-time theatre goers, and others were hardcore dance supporters. So it was a real mix. It was great, having a room full of people from different walks of life in one room.
And after a number of successful years, the company experienced a period of quite a lot of change, and so you've been going along one path, and then you had to revisit the position of Black Grace and how you wanted that company to work. And so that must have been a quite sort of scary time, and I'm just wondering how the audience came along with you on that journey, or whether, and how you considered that when, you know, during that period of huge change. Do you think that the same audience came along, or do you think that then it attracted a new audience in the way that the company had developed at that time?
Yeah, well, certainly 2005 and 2006 were difficult years for Black Grace. I mean, it really challenged our audiences, and certainly our brand needed some remaking. It was a decision that was made sort of 3 months into the year in 2006. I went back to work and there were about 4 people left in the building. Everyone else had gone, you know, for various reasons, and I had a decision to make, really, whether to carry on or not. And I think people were perhaps wanting me not to, and I'm just that kind of guy. When people tell me not to do things, I tend to go and do it anyway. So I thought I wasn't going to stop. I still wanted to make dance. I didn't want to go quietly, so to speak, and so I made some very important phone calls to key people, to key organisations. I tried not to read my email, check my phone messages too often, because it wasn't always nice. And I decided that in order for me to keep my audience, I needed to rebrand Black Grace. And so I enrolled some very smart people who were friends of mine at the time, and we completely remade the typography for Black Grace, started talking about the imagery, how we wanted to present ourselves, what we wanted people to see. And, you know, I took a whole bunch of advice from a whole bunch of people, which was all conflicting. People said, you need to disappear into the background. Other people said, you need to go to the front of it. You need to lead it from the front. All sorts of things. And I just decided at the end that I was going to do what I wanted to do. Because, you know, in essence, I'm an artist. And I started Black Grace so I could tell stories. And I was going to tell those stories regardless. Whether people came along or not, I was going to find a way to tell them. So I went out and I auditioned for male dancers, thinking that I was going to put back a company of similar makeup, and went back and couldn't find many. Instead, I found 12 women and got hammered, absolutely hammered, in the media and in various things. And funnily enough, that show that went up that year in 2007, Amata, was our highest selling show. It sold out all over the country. And it got completely decimated by the reviewers and people, I think. Not that I read them all, but I was told. And I also enlisted a really good producer, a chap by the name of, some of you might know him, a guy called Lester McGrath, who's a very savvy operator and is now the general manager of Auckland Theatre Company. And so I got him on, and basically I just went from there and called my agent in New York, told her what I was doing. She'd heard over there that things weren't very good. I spoke to Creative New Zealand, I spoke to key sponsors and said, trust me. They said, some of them said no. I said, oh well. Some of them said, okay, we're going to give you this long. And those people that gave me that long are pretty much still here and still support Black Grace. So it was a tough time, but the audience came along, and you know, we do all sorts of things now, and they change all the time. You know, I've got people who've seen shows and back in 2006 and back in 1996, and people who still turn up and send emails and what have you to Black Grace, and from all walks of life, from Waimate right through to, you know, Ponsonby. We've got a good mix, and I think that's important.
And just talking about that, you tour extensively with Black Grace in New Zealand, and how important do you think that touring for the company, how important is that when it comes to securing the sort of breadth of audience that you have? What's your strategy behind your touring for Black Grace?
Well, our general strategy around touring is we go overseas and we make money over there, and we bring it back home and we set it on fire in New Zealand, trying to tour here. And I mean that, you know, really respectfully. It is very, very hard. The moment you get your company up and you're out on the road, the setup in venues and various councils around the country aren't conducive to an environment where you can produce art and make it viable. It doesn't work that way here. Overseas they do that. They have touring circuits, and you get on, for example, in the US. We'll tour to the US. They'll take us for anywhere from 3 to 6 weeks, and they'll just pass us, in a sense, around their circuit. And that enables us to not take any risk at the box office. They pay us fees. We take those fees and we bring them home here, and we take all the risk, or most of the time, all the risk here in New Zealand. Apart from when we get a good festival or a good presenter somewhere that says, we'd love to have you, we'll share some of the risk with you, or we'll pay you an outright fee, which I think is a really great model, because generally speaking, those venues and those presenters know their communities, and they can market more effectively to them than we can. We can't come in from Auckland City and try and market into Ashburton in the South Island. We don't know that community. So having a presenter that's really active and smart and that, and thinks, oh, I'll program Black Grace, they'll be a great performance for my community, we trust them. We go in there and we trust that they do their thing, and generally speaking it's worked out for us over the years. But that's how we do it. Touring is difficult in New Zealand. We'd love to do more of it, and we generally go to places where people don't want to go, and we do things. We've perfected the art of getting in and out of a theatre in a day. We travel very light. I think it was Paul Taylor, the great choreographer, who said lights and tights, and so that's not the tights for us, but definitely some light. But that's how we do it. We just get in and get out as fast as we can, and we do a very similar thing internationally, because, you know, it really is, you can't have the 4-day pack-in anymore. The economics just don't work.
So now I'm just going to talk to Hone and ask you a few questions. The first, I hope, is a very simple one, which is about the Ahi Kaa festival, which is on at the moment. And we're very privileged to be with you right now, where this idea has just come to you, and now you're trying to make it work and you're putting out into the world and putting it towards audiences. So could you tell us a bit about your vision for Ahi Kaa and your process of deciding that a festival was the thing that you wanted to bring to Wellington?
Pai. Ha tēnā koutou katoa I hui mai nei I tēnei rā. Kia ora, thank you, Meg. The Ahi Kaa Festival, I've been in Wellington for well over 20 years now, and just watched the city and its highs and lows, and it's gone through quite a period, the last, say, 5, 6, 7 years, and just looking at it creatively and coming from a theatre background, I also looked at it from a Māori point of view, going, where are we in this landscape here? And just kind of our company, Tuatara Productions, which has been running for just over 10 years, has had a festival over at Circa Theatre just across the road for the last 5 years, developing new works. And what I noticed is that in the last 2 years, there's been a lot of practitioners coming down from Auckland just hanging around and just going, there's a good vibe happening here, and then I went, we should make more use of you, basically, is a really simple way of looking at it. So I then, and this was last year, went around to Bats, to Papa, the Hannah Playhouse, Circa as well, and just said, give me a slot and we'll fill it. And basically that's where the festival came from, the concept and idea of it. One of the other reasons is that there was a real lack of visibility for Māori in the city in regards to theatre. And then I looked at it again and went, actually, we should couple up with our dance whanaunga, so theatre and dance. And then from there, I went, all right, we've got really strong companies here in Wellington. That's one of the strengths down here. We have companies. Auckland has a lot of practitioners, but they tend to be a lot of actors, and there's not a lot of companies driving it up there. But down here's the difference. So I looked at that, and then I went, Matariki is a perfect time for us. It's a really positive time for Māori, and Māori are looked at in a really positive light at this period of time. If we did it at Waitangi Day, I don't think it'd be the same, So that's why I kind of chose that. And then I looked at Matariki and how things are working here in the city, and I felt that it was really too wide, and went, okay, let's just actually focus it. Let's focus it on dance and theatre. And what we've found, and then looking at each of the venues, and since I've been here, as I said, quite a period of time, I went, okay, so we'll put the really edgy stuff with lots of walk-ups and Bats. We'll put the work that's more mainstream in the Hannah Playhouse, because we're going to heat that up really fast. And then we've got our own, I suppose, whakapapa here at Circa, so we'll do the big show here and the longest season there, and then use Te Papa as well, its machine. So basically, we got these slots, and then all of a sudden it was happening. So the next process we went is actually, how do you market a festival? So what we did is we went to the Fringe Festival and went, can we talk to you about how your umbrella, works and things like that? So for this Ahi Kaa Festival, we said to each of the companies, you're taking the risk, and we really appreciated that. Said to the venues, you're taking the risk, but we will try and create an umbrella over the top of that to just to emphasise and just to use the visibility and really strong branding generally in relation to it. And it was great that everyone, because they knew what the kaupapa was or the philosophy, they bought into it straight away. Went, I get it. So we've got our own individual identity. Each venue's got their own identity, and we have as well. And what that also meant is that you got all these different communities coming together really, really quickly. And then you had over that the Māori communities coming together as well. And then refocusing again about Matariki and the dance and the theatre communities. So one of the strengths I know that we have are people, and that's actually what we work towards. And once we found that it started to get momentum, because we went not only to the Fringe but to the New Zealand Festival as well. And the New Zealand Festival, and it was Meg, and it was great, with Sheila, and went, oh, okay, we'll talk to you about how you market this sort of thing, how you umbrella and just add tautoko and support, really. And that was the engine, the constant coming together and the constant ownership from everyone involved. So we had 2 shows at Bats, 2 shows at the Hannah, we've got the beautiful ones, which opens on Saturday, actually, people, here, and also the Matariki Development Festival, another festival we've got on at the same time, and then we've got Ngā Pou Wahine over at Te Papa. And just joining those up. Once we had the venues, we then went, I thought, how are we going to tie this together? So basically, we then commissioned a visual artist to create sculptures for each of these venues that literally tied each of them up together as well. And people really responded to that. And what I started to learn was, because it's artist-led, it's getting a really different response to it. And that it also, for some reason, people were listening to me and going, okay, what about we go this way, we go that way? And so there was a lot of, it's about trust, primarily. But what we found, again, because there were the bodies and you were bringing the different communities together, the first 2 seasons sold out. It was solid at the Hannah Playhouse as well. There were 2 companies that hadn't been to Wellington having seasons before, and we needed to start blooding and doing those sorts of things as well. And here at Circa, you know, our people come later to buying tickets, but we've got a history at that space. And Te Papa, it's a big engine. So just buying in and using all of these other elements, because we had a budget of $7,000. So and we went, where do we spend that? What do we do? And we thought, okay, this is where we're starting, and that's how we talked to everyone as well. We went, this may be rebranded totally next year. You know, we really need to be open like that in regards to it. And so the advice from the Fringe and from the New Zealand Festival, and also some elements of the Auckland Festival as well, is you figure out what sort of festival you want to create, whether it stays more like an umbrella, as in like a Fringe, or it's more like the bigger festival where it's buy-ins, or it's a mix of the two. So it's a really great space to be in, to just kind of see what we can create. And that's, to me, the most exciting thing about this, is that it was just an idea, everyone jumped on it, and then it just flourished and grew from there. One of the other key elements as well is that I was really adamant about showing the diversity of our work. So you had Not in Our Neighbourhood, which was a social realism. You had 2080, was Indigenous science fiction. You had Double Derelicts, the Whiteface Crew, which was mime hip-hop, Māori hip-hop. You had the Modern Māori Quartet, which was its own cabaret type show. And then the Beautiful Ones, which is basically a dance party on stage. And then a classic with Ngā Pou Wahine. So really understanding that. And what we've found is that the pickup has been great because of the diversity of it. But I also, when I got all the producers and all the companies together, I went, it may have a Māori focus, but people, it's all about being the best. And so that was a big push to everyone going, we're in Matariki, you know, and it's a Māori, but actually it's all about quality is what it comes down to. And people want that. And it's something I learnt when I was artistic director at Takirua Theatre in the early 2000s, that Takirua at that time was all about new work. And then it wasn't, and people came to it because they knew it was good quality new work. They weren't sure what it was, but they would come. And so you held this core audience. So learning those sorts of processes and stuff like that takes a little bit of time, but it was really interesting to get it into practice. And what we've found now is that bigger partners are coming towards us. And we're going, oh, taihua, let's talk after this about the possibility of, you know, how it will work next year. Because again, as I said, that it's artist-led is actually one of the key indicators in it. So yeah, next year we want to go bigger and better. So if anyone wants to come our direction here and help us out, that's all cool. But that's how it started.
Brilliant. So it's like a start-up festival. I like it. So entrepreneurialism action. That's fantastic. Thank you, Hone. And we just talked a little bit earlier when we met before about location. I know that this was raised in the keynote this morning about how some spaces and space and place can be really important for audiences, and in some cases that it's almost like a barrier to people. They don't feel that they are either able to attend an event in a particular space. And Hone and I worked on the 2012 festival, and you produced 2 at the PPTM&I. And I was just interested to know, just from a directorial perspective or as a playwright, how space comes into thinking about your work, and also how important that is, you think, in terms of shaping the audience experience.
That's great. In regards to 2, it was at a marae. So obviously for our communities, it was, they were much more relaxed than going into the other venues. But again, going back to Ahi Kaa, because we articulated that's 4 iconic Wellington venues, people bought into that as well. So it's really actually understanding what our venues are, and one of the things with Pipitea that we try to do is go towards the tourism, because you go, it's a strange amorphous thing that other people don't have, and go, if you don't rely on our base Wellington audience here, there's a great festival audience, but actually tourists and tourism is actually something we haven't, I don't believe in the theatre, and I can't speak so much for the dance industry, we've really keyed into enough to go, that point of difference is what people really dig, they really like it. And I think, as Tracey was saying before, you'll get someone to go to one thing and they'll remember it from 5 years ago, but they'll talk about it, and that's just building that brand and that rep that way. So yeah, a venue really does. I mean, the logistics are always the hardest thing, going into somewhere that's not a theatre, but it really does freshen it up. I found it was the first time at that marae, big marae, that they'd had a big theatre piece in there before. We built seating and everything like that, and all the whānau and the crew were all there, and it really just changed the mindset, and that's really lots about what we're about. It's just quietly changing mindsets and getting people comfortable with it. So yeah, it does work, but obviously, as Neil would know too, and Tracey, that a venue can work for you and it can work against you too, yeah.
So Tracey, let's talk a bit about your venue, the beautiful City Gallery in Wellington, and I'd be interested to hear your thoughts about that space and from the organisation's perspective. Do you think about your space as a gallery, and what are some of the ways that you look to invite people into your world at the City Gallery?
Kia ora everyone. Yeah, we're really fortunate. We have an incredibly beautiful space. We occupy the former public library building, which was renovated 22 years ago now, to be the home for City Gallery Wellington. It's a beautiful building, but it has barriers. It's a contemporary art gallery, which can be really exciting for some audiences and really terrifying for other audiences. It's a beautiful space internally, but it has this incredibly imposing presence, I think, in Civic Square, with a tricky front door that is hard to get into, particularly if you're pushing a buggy, or if you're in a wheelchair, or if your arm isn't as strong as the person who went before you. So there are really amazing things about the space, and there are amazing things about the quality of light. The floor is incredibly beautiful, and artists love the floor. The height is grand, and we also have a series of quite lovely intimate spaces, but we also have to really actively work to counter some of the barriers that people come up against. And I guess hugely my job is about that. So I run the public programs, which means we try to create all sorts of different programs for all sorts of different audiences, from tots to grannies, from broadly interested in the visual arts through to professors of fine art. So it's incredibly broad in its scope, and every program that we do is attempting to appeal to and open up the artwork on show for those different audiences. We have a range of programs like, we have a program called Gallery Babes, which has been going for about 10 years now, where we have parents with young children come in on a Wednesday or Thursday morning and get a tour. It's aimed specifically at parents. It's not obviously aimed at the babies. And it's creating a social space for new parents to be in the gallery, and they get a tour, and then they get taken into our boardroom, which is the most private space that we have available to us, so mothers can breastfeed and change the babies, and we put on coffee, and it's a really wonderful sort of social thing for new parents. we have family programs, we have film programs that bounce off the exhibition seasons, all sorts of things. And a lot of it is about partnering with other, I guess, content providers. Footnote Dance we have partnered with for many, many years to bring dancers into the space, which brings an entirely different audience from our core gallery-going audience. People who are interested in dance will come along to those performances. So there's all sorts of ways that we do that. Yeah.
Great. And you talked to me a little bit earlier about a specific example of when you had a major exhibition in the gallery and that you wanted to find a live event that would complement that, that would bring a different audience into the gallery for that work. Can you tell us a bit about that?
Sure. I was reading The Reader last night, or glancing at The Reader for this, and something that struck me was this statement that said relevance is king. And the reason it struck me is that we have a work on show at the moment by an artist called Candice Brights called King, A Portrait of Michael Jackson. And it's a really fantastic work. It's 16, it's a multi-screen video work, 16 German Michael Jackson fans sing the entire album of Thriller a cappella.
It's awesome.
It is awesome, right?
I watched it right through.
Yeah, great. We're listening to it right through every day. 4 months. And I've had concussion. It's been awful. But anyway, no, it's great. And when we were thinking about how we might bring people to that work, for me, I just kind of went, Thriller, Michael Jackson, Boy, Taika, Poia, and you know, what Taika Waititi did at the end of Boy was this beautiful, beautiful moment where he does this cultural mashup of Poia, which was, you know, the massive hit in the early 80s, to Thriller, which was also the other massive hit of the early 80s, and mashes it together in this way that means something very particular to this place, to New Zealand and to New Zealand audiences. And it's not a new idea, but we thought, okay, we're going to do a flash mob, and that will draw people's attention to the Brights work. So it's all coming from the exhibition, but we've now done 3 flash mobs. One was on an opening weekend, so amazing timing. It was the opening weekend for our show, but it was also Cuba Duper. So we had a flash mob at Cuba Duper. About 300 people came and danced. We engaged Whitireia Performing Arts to lead that. So that was great. We did one during Open Late, and I know we're going to talk about Open Late in a minute. And then a couple of weeks ago, we launched the Matariki Festival in Wellington with a big one in Civic Square, and there were about 500 people there. So it worked, and one of the really cool things about it working was that I know that it was more than just people engaging with Boy, because literally when it stopped at the Matariki Festival launch, about half the audience, it felt like, ran into the gallery. And I thought, oh, okay, they're all going in to see the screening of Boy, because we put on a screening afterwards. 20 people came to the screening. Most of those people were in watching King, the Candice Brights work. So, yeah, it was a good moment for us to go, it worked.
You can see it happening live, that's fantastic. And so I'm a big fan of Tuatara Open Late. It's actually become a bit of a habit for me that's when I go to the gallery to see the new exhibition. So, and I know that idea has been trialled at a lot of different galleries and different spaces, but could you tell us a bit more about Open Late? What was the genesis for the idea, and how has it kind of developed, and how does it work?
Yeah, I think the genesis goes back, again, about 10 years or so. I've done 2 stints at City Gallery. I did a 5-year stint in the same job, essentially, in the early 2000s, and then I went away, did some other things, and have come back and have been back for 2 years. So Tuatara Open Late, in lots of ways, is going back to some early programming that we tested way back then. And we used to do it in this slightly random way. I could sort of pull together enough budget to do one every exhibition season, which was one every 3 months. And it was pre-social media, so it was much harder to get the word out among audiences. And we didn't, I think it worked okay. It was a good testing ground way back then, but we didn't have the broad institutional support for the program. So I guess I took that learning, and when I came back to the gallery, it was something I really wanted to do. And so a big driver has actually been cementing a regular open late, because at its core, Tuatara Open Late is a first Thursday of the month. Instead of closing at 5, we close at 10. We have an open bar. We work with local food producers to have food on sale so people can have their dinner there. And we program a changing program of events. And I've been really, when we first developed it, I was a real stickler. One of my colleagues was like, we've got to have music every time. And I really fundamentally believed that wasn't the thing, that it needed to be a changing program. So we've launched a book club hosted by Emily Perkins. We've done a couple of film premieres. We have we've programmed lots of live music acts, which have been really great, and talks and tours and all sorts of things. And it's really important to me that it changes and it evolves, and that it also really critically responds to the exhibitions on show. So, yeah, that's what it is. And it's gone really well.
Fantastic. And so it sounds to me like the Open Late program is a way of kind of creating a framework that lets other people in. And what is it about that? Is it the social side, or is it the fact that, say, the band that you program has its own following? Do you have a sense of that, of what's making it so successful? It's all of that.
A lot of it is the programming being very conscious of who the audience is and being quite specific about that. I think the social thing is hugely important. People, you know, arts events are social events, as somebody else on a panel that I just heard said. And we give people an opportunity to come and have a drink with their mates and probably see an exhibition at the same time. And so it opens up that intellectual engagement as well, but it is primarily social. You don't see that many people walking in solo. It's also really nice. We have, I think, by opening up one night late, you know, there's not that many people who are, or there is, but not everybody is available between 10 and 5 during the rest of the week. There are lots of people. I'm a mum. I find it hard to get to galleries during those hours. You know, on the weekend you're busy with the kids, during the week you're at work. It's sort of finding more spaces in the week that we can be open and available for people. Yeah.
And all of the panel have talked about being artist-led, and that that is kind of key to the success of a lot of these programs. And so you're kind of coming at it as a sort of secondary creative. So you've got the artist who is producing the exhibition, that's the body of their work, or a number of artists in the exhibitions in the main gallery space. And then you're kind of coming along and producing a complementary suite of events on top of that. So how does that collaboration work?
It changes all the time, and it depends on the artists that we're working with. We launched Tuatara Open Late in June last year, so we've been going for about a year now. And that was amazing. We launched the program. We had a major show by an artist called Seung Oh, which were very crudely a series of massive inflatables as part of the work. And Seung is a really fun, engaging, wonderful collaborator. And so very early on, I was able to sit down with him and say, okay, we're going to launch this late night opening. We want it to appeal to all these different audience groups. We want the evenings to flow in a particular way. What can you bring to the table as ideas? And he was really full of ideas, and particularly around booking the first band, which I think set the tone really well for Open Late. And you know, he gave me a list, and we looked at it together, and we chose Golden Acts, who are, you know, guys that he went through art school with. And so he had a really strong personal connection. So that was really successful. When we did the Yvonne Todd work, I had a really strong exhibition. I had a really strong hunch that tonally Lawrence Arabia would work really beautifully, and we were aware that we had one shot because of the timing over the summer months. We weren't going to do Open Late in December and January, so we had one big shot the night before Waitangi to do a big Open Late. And yeah, I thought tonally Lawrence Arabia would be great. Yvonne Todd didn't know Lawrence Arabia's music at all, and suggested something completely different, and I'm really pleased I went, in that instance, I went with my gut, and we had one of our biggest, a second equal nights yet, which was amazing, and the crowd drank the bar dry.
That's a sign of a good night. Thank you very much. Now, I wanted to open it out to you guys for questions, and I'll come around with the microphone so people can hear. But does anyone have any questions for our panel on either the theme of relevant marketing is better than clever programming, or any questions to follow up on what they've asked?
Hi, first of all, thank you, all three of you, for sharing a lot of really useful insights. Tracey, I've got a question for you, which is, a lot of what you talk about is about getting new audiences from different disciplines and different genres into City Gallery, and a lot of what the conversation today has been about is about, you know, growing my audience by going to another discipline or going to something else. I'm interested in the reverse from City Gallery's point of view, and say with Footnote coming into the gallery to bring a dance audience into City Gallery, what work, if any, are City Gallery doing to get an art gallery audience to go to contemporary dance? Or when Lawrence Arabia plays, are you doing anything in that field? You're getting a new audience in who might not come to the gallery but will go to dance, but are you working the reverse of that by actually saying to Richard, actually, how can we work with our patron base from the gallery to get them to go to? I just wonder whether it's a two-way relationship. And I guess that might also be relevant to the other panelists as well, in terms of, you know, Neil growing an audience from originally, you know, mates and that community, but then how you go back into those communities and things like that. So yeah, I'm just interested in the reverse of it.
Yeah, it's a really good question. I guess one thing that's important to think about is that these audiences aren't necessarily radically different. The same person who might go to a Footnote show might also happen to be at the gallery when that performance is happening, or a person who's never been to a Footnote show is at the gallery, you know, seeing an exhibition. They didn't know that a Footnote thing was going to happen. They stumble upon the Footnote experience, and then they think, oh, maybe dance is for me, and so they go in that way. So I think there's a reciprocity in that sense. We also, I suppose, through our promotion of these events, are highlighting other art forms or other conversations to our core audience. And, you know, our e-newsletter goes to something like 13,000 people in Wellington. So there's a good spread there when we invite people in from other art forms. Yeah.
Any other questions?
I'll read from the page. I just wanted to kind of talk, Tracey, you said about you focus on who the audience are for a particular piece of work. But I sort of wanted to kind of put this question out there about how do we focus on what they want? So, you know, we can go out and do surveys and we put in questions, you know, what would you like to see more of? And as a venue, so talking from a venue perspective, and they'll say we want to see more musical theatre, we want to see more comedy or dance. But how do we actually, I suppose it's that thing of how do we program more to what they want instead of programming and then trying to sell it to them? Do you guys have a view on that?
Okay. I think in regards to us, we knew that our greatest strength is that we're really good artists, you know, and that's the quality of the work, and that each of the artists brings an audience towards them as well. And then it's just going, okay, how then do you go, you know, you've got this core audience, but actually how do we talk to wide beyond that? And it's really, as I said, for us, it was three-tiered: the company or the artist, the company, the venue, us. And so us was the much wider element to it as well. So it depends on also what artists you've got in there and what they're bringing towards you, and you go, oh, goodness, you've got a really small base there. This is not probably going to work for us at this stage. And so, or you get someone who's really popular, as in has a very wide reach, and then you push the other stuff around it and just go, hey, look at this, look at, you know, and that sort of thing. So that's kind of how we did it. And it's something I've just kind of noticed that is a way to do that, to really use, you know, what resources do you have? And actually utilise them, get ownership from it, and then it just tends to expand itself from there. So it is a difficult one, yeah.
Could I just add, from our perspective, or Black Grace's perspective, when I'm considering creating a work or getting various dancers within the company to create works, the most important thing is that they feel free to create whatever they want. So they make that, and then within that framework, I pick out works that I think would suit this particular program. Yep. So if we were going to go and do something at a high school, then I would choose these works that are a bit shorter, that are a bit faster, more engaging on a particular level. If we're going to go to somewhere else, I'd pick another thing. And for a long time, Black Grace used to have four different types of programs. So we had new works, which was a short sort of R&D season, and very, very accessible, very, very popular. Then we'd have Urban Youth Movement, which was a youth program, and then we did Black Grace and Friends, which was a little bit more pitched up, and sort of 3 works, a triple bill. You'd get 3 sort of young, semi-established choreographers to work on the company, and then there were the major work seasons, which were evening-length works and sort of designed for a theatre, a bigger theatre, and then you just sort of decide which ones went where. And often when we tour, we are putting together programs for various venues and presenters, and we sell them a couple of years in advance overseas. So it's building that repertoire and having enough to meet the various needs. We don't necessarily go out and design them specifically for that, but also you can't bury your head in the sand and pretend that, you know, if you want to make your sort of art and keep making it, and being able to make it, then you, at some point or other, and I think it's generally when you go to deliver it, you have to consider the quality of that execution, and I think that's very, very important. But I think more interesting is the whole discussion about how people are consuming art now, and whether we consider physical infrastructure still as an important place for people to come to. Because I've always wondered why Pacific Islanders don't come to the theatre. And that's because the delineation between art and life is not really there. You know, they sing, they paint, we sing, we paint, we act, we do all these things that we don't consider it separate. You know, we don't necessarily have to go to a theatre to experience that. So it's quite a different thought. So I'm thinking more and more, how do we create work in spaces that aren't typical spaces, in places where, I mean, you can pretty much download anything you want on your phone in the privacy of your bathroom if you want. So when it comes to art, why do we still require people to leave their homes to go to a big old theatre and pay $65 for a ticket? I'm just asking, because I think that's something I've been thinking about for a long time. And so in response to that, I think we need to go out more, and we do. We've started going into old people's homes and working with them in a different way, taking art out of the usual places, really, I suppose, and trying not to be so precious about it. I still love theatres. I'm a great fan of them, and galleries.
And I could just probably add to that from a marketing perspective around the research process. We at the festival used to, when people signed up to our e-newsletter, we used to ask them what they were interested in. And we would put theatre, dance, and we do it in our own language, which was genres of art forms. And people would most people would click everything. So we were like, we're being very clever, we're segmenting our audiences. But actually, people didn't really think in that way at all. And so one of the things in terms of your research process, when you're thinking about what are we asking, I've come to thinking about things in terms of values. And I think that speaks to what Tracey was saying, which is, is it that I want to have social experiences with my friends? I want to take my kids to experiences that will blow their minds, or I'm looking for a challenge, or I'm looking for something to take my mind off work. And it's perhaps through those slightly more lateral questions that that can kind of help inform your thinking, but isn't sort of taking you down a path where if you ask me whether I like theatre, I'd probably say yes, but I don't know if it would make me any more likely to go to the gallery if there was a show on in that space. So I just wonder whether that was relevant to your point.
If I can add to that as well, a conversation that we've been having is the event in a season. You know, and people are really, they go towards an event. That's one thing that we've really noticed a lot. And you're going, how do you extend that over a period of time? And that's kind of what you'll be looking at as well, going, do you peppercorn it through? Do you make one big bang and do you work it that way? So it's an ongoing conversation for us, you know, between these two sorts of things, because for us we have long seasons of things. And festivals, they can more condense, so it's more of an event in that regard. So it might be another way to look at it, I suppose. Yeah.
And actually we think about things in that way too, because an exhibition is a season, which we're about to launch some new shows that are up for 5 months, which is an incredibly long period of time. And so a lot of my work is creating the events that pepper that season and that spike interest at particular moments.
Any last questions?
Hone, I just want to really reiterate the point that you've made about festivals and people trusting your work. And there's something that came up in Audience Atlas that people still believe international art is better than New Zealand art. But within our own festivals, so within festival context, people trust a festival. And it's because they trust that the calibre of the work is going to be excellent. And so that's a really brilliant way to actually introduce people to a whole wide range of art forms. And I just think festivals are an excellent platform for growing audiences.
How long do you think, just out of interest, how long do you think the festival thing is going to last, given that there's such an increase in festivals? Like every weekend there's some festival somewhere. Everyone's got a festival. It's a festival, another festival. I'm just wondering, you know.
Performing arts festivals, because it's wide and you can integrate the visual arts into that as well, which is what you've done. You know, you're engaging a wide range of artists as well.
Yeah. I think something as well with us is that I'm really staunch about theatre. So we've had musicians coming towards us and visual artists and we went, oh, no, it's just theatre and dance. That's what it comes down to. And realising that actually that made it different again. And it's not to say that these other art forms are not amazing, because they really are. But for us, we looked at it and we went, the musicians have Music Month. Musicians have the radio stations. You know, what do we have? And, you know, and it's just one way for us to look at it. And the visual artists have galleries. So it was just kind of something that surprised us when we made that choice to go, actually, we've got a lot of bodies, and it's usually slightly harder with the dance community as well. Combine those two together and just make it quite unique in that regard. So maybe it's looking at it that way sometimes, just slightly different art forms.
And I would reiterate that for us as well, we next week we have a big project called Art Night, which is a collaboration across the Wellington region. We put on buses that go for free between City Gallery and Te Papa in the city, to Pātaka out in Pororua, to the Douse and Lower Hutt. We expressions in Upper Hutt, and this year we're extending to Mahara. This is the second year that's been running through the Matariki Festival, and we've had that conversation with other venues wanting to be part of that. And for me, it was so important that it's art. It's called Art Night, and it's about contemporary art, and that's the frame, and it's already pretty big, even within that frame. And that each gallery, the programming that they put on in the space often bleeds out into other art forms. So, you know, we've got Newtown Rocksteady playing at City Gallery, and the Māori Modern Quartet are playing at Te Papa, but that the focus of the night, as it's called, is Art Night. Yeah.
give me the nod. So thank you very much. I'd just like to thank the panel. Thank you so much for your time, and I'm sure they'll stick around and have a cup of tea, so if you want to speak to them directly, please do. So if you just join me in thanking the panel.